sinking, when he is weak and insufficient and needy, that he experiences this amazing grace of God. And Louis Giglio, a guy that I really admire, in a book that he wrote called Comeback, says this: the entire story of humanity is a story of people who have stumbled and fallen. Can we way-ho that right now?
Way-ho.
Can we way-ho that? Because the reality is that that's not just your story, that's my story, that's Ross's story, that's Jenny's story and Kelly. Like, we stumble and we fall on a daily basis. That's not just for you. The reality is humanity is constantly thus stumbling and falling. Yet somehow in this ocean, and I love this, in this ocean of God's grace and mercy, he provides a comeback for anyone who puts their faith and hope in Jesus. Listen, being human means you're going to fail. It means you're going to sink. And if that quote is right, and if what I think about Peter experiencing grace is right, it means it's when you sink that it's the most precious. It's in those weakness moments, stumbles and falls, that it becomes real to you. And that's where Jesus reaches out and grabs you in your weakness. And as we make movements towards Jesus, and as we're weak and as we call out to experience Him and His grace, we often find there's another power looming in that place, right? Peter did. Peter found a very strong power just kind of living in that same faith space. And it's called fear, and it's called failure. And the enemy loves those tools. And he wants you to look at everything else because he wants to pull you under that crushing weight of fear. Because he knows he can motivate you in a strong way. Lord, save me. So there is another power that is living alongside of our faith that wants to pull you under that wave. Lord, save me, but thank God Jesus is stronger. Way-ho, thank God Jesus can pull us up. And we don't have to sink. That's an inside joke, by the way. So stepping out in God's power causes us to meet another person along the way. And I'm going to promise you, I just encouraged you all last week, hey, if you step out, it's going to be awesome. But you know what? It's going to be difficult. Because the enemy is not going to want to see you succeed. I wrestled about this, but I'm just going to tell you a little bit about where I was 7 years ago, because I was in the heat of this battle. Fighting for emotional sanity. I had just gotten out of college, and I found my dream job. I was going to teach students. And it was awesome because it was not only students, but it was back in my hometown. It was Colorado Springs Christian. It'd be if you moved back after college and got planted here at a farm that you grew up working around or working in, or if you got put back into Ripon Christian after a time. And so I was just on cloud 9. And I was connecting with students. I was alive. The teaching was easy for me. I was making inroads. The Bible wasn't boring anymore. These students were actually kind of thinking that it was cool to dive into the things of Jesus. Not just dumb and boring. I'll never forget, about a year into that, when I thought stuff was going really well, I was watching the movie District 9. I'll never forget this. District 9 was going on. And then as the movie went, I couldn't catch my breath. I felt really odd. My heart was racing, almost pounding out of my chest. And sweat beads were starting to form on my forehead. And I began to feel this numbing sensation on my left side. And I was sitting there, and my wife noticed I'm shifting and I'm being uneasy, and I'm actually standing up and kind of walking around, and she's getting a little creeped out by it. And so I'm just here's what's going on. Something's off. And she's just okay, let's do this. We're going to just shut the movie down. We're going to go to bed. We're just going to sleep on it. It's going to be okay. You had a rough go, tough week. We're just going to let it go. And so we did. And as I was laying in bed, the feeling never left. My wife was asleep. I literally got out of bed and started doing push-ups. Because I'm just like, this has got to be done. Like, I have so much energy. I feel crazy. I want to run laps. But nothing was working. And I couldn't remain there because every time I went back to bed, like this crushing weight was like on my chest. I couldn't breathe. And so I heard my son in the room down from us. He's very little at this time, so I walked over to where he was at, and I picked him up because he had stirred, and I'm holding him, just like hoping this would do something for me. And I'm going to tell you something. I don't even know if it was real, if this is a real part of the story, but it was so real in my mind at the time that it sticks there. But I'm holding and I'm talking to him, and he can't say little words like mama, dada. At this point, it wasn't like he was an infant. But I swear to you, as I'm sitting there holding him, this again, I don't know if this is real, that he says bye-bye to me. And it's in that moment that I lost it. Like, I seriously, put him back down in the crib, and I hustled to where my wife was, and I woke her up, and I'm like, honey, something is wrong. I'm dying. My son just told me so. We need to go to the hospital. And then it's like blizzarding outside in Colorado at this time. Like, the snow is everywhere. And my parents have to come from like a half an hour easy drive away, which means an hour away in the snow. And we got to bundle up, and my wife has to take me to the ER. Listen, y'all, I'm like 24. My wife is driving me to the ER, and we're like afraid, and we're perplexed, and we don't know what's going on. And they rush me in because I told them about my numbness on the left side, and they're like, we got to get you in, so there's no waiting for me. And they put me in, they do chest x-rays, and they do EKGs on me, and they do a whole bunch of other random tests. And I'm just sitting there feeling really dumb and really defeated. And doctor comes in and he says something I never expected before. And he's like, listen, we haven't really found anything through your tests. Have you considered like a nervous breakdown? Have you considered that you just had an anxiety attack? Are you dealing with any depression? It's like in that moment, that word, like, I'm like, depression? Like, me? What? No, I'm outgoing. I talk to people. I'm a teacher. No, it's not me. I don't get depressed. And so I kind of walked out there really confused, but really determined that I was going to defeat this whole thing. Listen, y'all. For the next year of my life, I was in and out of doctors. I was hooked up to my EKGs that I like to tell you. I went through blood tests. I did regular blood pressure stuff. I went through a disease a day that I was going to die of. It affected my marriage. It affected my ability to parent and want to engage with my child. My wife was under so much stress trying to keep our household together because at the time she was doing in-home daycare, and that was killing us too, that she developed this thing called shingles, which is like a nerve disorder where like if you touch your skin, like it hurts. I couldn't be a good friend. I was debilitated. When we step out into thinking that we're going to be in God's movement in the world, it's never just going to be easy. I had never dealt with anything like that before. And I know some of you know what depression is. And I was on antidepressants, seriously, for over a year of my life, not even like knowing like if I was going to make it through the next day because I was so just wrecked. And I was sinking. I was sinking and I was getting pulled underneath. Because I had thought in my mind like I could start walking on water. And this is where we find Nehemiah in the story. Nehemiah is going to be done with this honeymoon period of telling people his story about what God has done in his life. If I can just catch you up to that, Nehemiah has just said, listen, the king is moving in an amazing way. Let's rebuild. And everyone says, let's go rebuild. And the work began, and it was amazing. But we get one verse down the road in Nehemiah 2. One verse. And this is how verse 19 begins, with the conjunction but. I don't know if you've ever lived your life in that state as a follower of Jesus. Like, you've had an amazing encounter. You are starting your quiet time. You're growing in the things of God. You're really leaning in. Then all of a sudden, the enemy wants to lean in with the conjunction of your life. Like, you really think you can do that? You can be that? But look at this in your life. He's really good at the DVR replay, isn't he? Where you go like, I'm taking a step, because but what about this? And he replays that moment in the summer where you stumbled and you fell, and he's making you relive that. But you can't do this. Why would God ever love something like you or use something like you? You're not special. You think you? No, but look at this. And just know in our lives that when God calls us to step out, there's going to be another power that's going to want to step in. And this is what Jesus tells us. If the world hates you, in John 15 through 18 verse through 20, if the world hates you, remember that it hated me first. The world would love you as one of its own if you belong to it. But you are no longer part of the world. I chose you to come out of the world, so it hates you. Do you remember what I told you? A slave is not greater than the master. Since they persecuted me, naturally, they will persecute you. And if you had listened to me, or if they had listened to me, they would listen to you. See, Nehemiah carries this story of redemption. And what he finds is what Jesus says to be absolutely true. And so he finds this person named Sanballat. It says, but when Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem the Arab heard of our plan, they scoffed contemptuously. What are you doing? Are you rebelling against the king? They ask. See, here's where application number 1 comes in. Like, if you want to step out, then don't do it in your own power. See, for 4 months, Nehemiah is building this deep reverence for God, like submitting to His will, right? Admitting his weakness. And he moved out the power of God, and he knew that. He knew that. And so listen to how he responds, because we need to onboard this a moment. Here's how Nehemiah replied. The God of heaven will help us succeed. We, His servants, will start rebuilding this wall. You see, Sanballat wanted to keep it on the level of you. You are too weak. You already tried to do something and it didn't work. It resulted in failure. Look at the mess around you. The enemy will always try to keep our focus small on your power or your lack of it. And Nehemiah moves past it. And we need to as well. Nehemiah doesn't keep it in the me. He moves and he says, listen, it's not about me. I know what mission I'm on, and it's not human king's mission, it's the King of Kings' mission. And we are going to go. The enemy is going to want to keep it on you. He's going to spotlight it. He's going to spotlight the times you've tried and how it's failed, and we've got to know how to respond. And I promise you there are 4 things that Nehemiah is going to encounter. We're going to talk about 2 of them tonight. One of them is going to be really hard for you to onboard, but I promise you it's coming. This one, I think, is one that you will know. Here's one tool that the enemy will use to try and stop your movement for God's kingdom if he can. And movement number 1 is this.